Okay, welcome to this session of training on the Value Creator, which is a suite of applications. When you log in, you'll probably see something similar to this, where you have a pull down in the upper right, and then the center section of the screen will constantly be changing depending upon which tab. On this side, this is the left-hand navigation area. This is the center or the detailed or list area sometimes. So when you come in here, as the sales tab will be yours. This essentially organizes your tabs up here to the things you would normally use in your position. So leads, contacts, accounts, and opportunities, your primary things you'll be using. So welcome to this training on Value Creator Suite, which is actually a set of applications. And as you can see in the upper right-hand corner here, there's a pull down that has a number of titles, starting with sales, which is the standard Salesforce tab, and marketing, which is the standard Salesforce tab. There are a number of tabs that are placed there when you install Value Creator Suite. The first of those is business management, and that's the particular unit we're going to cover today is business management. Look for our other ones on the financial management, product management, process management, project management, and last, service management. The business management area is intended to be used by the top of the organization, whether in the case of IT, for example, it might be your CIO that would actually do this. And so when you're talking about business management, you're talking about managing the pieces that are relevant to the CIO, where if it's being used by the entire company, this might be the area where your CEOs and all your people that report to the CEO would potentially be using this business management tab. And what we mean by business management is basically a series of functions on a high level that are of concern of top management. Some of those things, for example, we call the top level vision, mission, strategy sort of information. We call that a charter. So one of the things that we recommend as a part of any base installation is that first thing is to set up at least one charter, and that charter would be corporate entity. If you're a nonprofit, it would be your nonprofit entity. In this case, we've set up this one for Business Performance Solutions. This is our corporate level. So if we actually go and view this record, you can see that we have our vision statement, our mission statement in here. The type of this is corporate. You can have several different types. You can have corporate group. And the reason there's kind of a hierarchy of these different is that you'd like to understand what top charter is, which would be your corporate charter. And then you might build sub-charters for example, different business units, different functional areas. And they all would then relate back to the corporate. So you can see on here on the right, there's something called higher charter. You would have your corporate charter, and then you would potentially, let's just talk about it from a functional area standpoint, you might have a charter by your development organization, might be a charter for your marketing organization. So you would create a business performance solution, say development charter, and it would be linked using this higher charter link with a biz performance solution. Start with where you are. So if you don't have a cleanly defined vision and mission statement, or even have started a vision mission statement, the minimum that you need to do is to come in here and set the charter name, period, and just save a record, because everything else is going to link to this. You can work on your vision mission statement. It also has the concept, by the way, of status. You can say that something's in draft, it's in the process of being reviewed, or it's been approved. And so you could have multiples of these, one which is approved and others that are in draft or review stage. If something becomes no longer valid, you can mark it as obsolete. See the status used throughout the planning sections of the application, where you'll have this ability to mark things in various levels of status. The other thing that we do consistently is you'll also find color on almost every object. We use a traffic lighting technique. Traffic lighting is green, yellow, and red. Green meaning everything is fine, everything's go. Yellow means caution, but we think we can still make it. And red means that we're stopped or something needs to be done, otherwise we're not going to meet our objective. You will also notice that on almost every object you will see this order, concept of order and ranking. The concept here in order is that this allows the user to define what order things will be displayed in. The ranking has to do with a calculation that can either be done manually or using our tool, which ranks these things in priority order. It's a forced ranking. You can do a high-level prioritization using a priority field, for example. So you can say, like, this is high priority because this is a corporate one. Once you get to more detailed analysis, you might actually get down into rankings where you might actually use numbers. So those are related concepts, and you'll see those throughout the product. It does these things over and over again. These are called, in Salesforce, these are called related lists because they're related to the charter. So the charter has a set of values. In this case, we're talking about human values. From the standpoint, we're talking about integrity, working smarter, not harder. These are our values for the corporation, and we haven't finished putting all of these in. But again, you see the concept of priority and rank again showing up in here. For every charter, you're going to see this consistently throughout the product. We have this concept of hierarchy. Our charter can actually be, again, in a relationship to another charter. So we talk about having higher level charters. You can also then, within a charter, talk about creating new subordinate charters. So as you can see, we were talking about a development charter. We put a development charter down here. And notice that its status over here is obsolete. And then we have a sales charter up here with the status of draft. And it shows the individual vision and mission statements for those subgroups. So you can see both a higher level vision, mission, and then the sub-levels all in one place, which allows you to look at them and see if they make sense between one another. We always recommend that you start where you are. So if you have a vision mission statement, then go ahead and fill this in. If you don't have one at the moment, don't start it yet. Get the information that you have today, that you use today, get that in the system first, and then start chipping away at these other areas such as a vision mission statement at a higher level, and then link that down into the vision mission statements and objectives at a lower level. Each charter can also then have a set of objectives, and these objectives are, in our case, maintain the current customer base, grow the business at 200% year over year, become a segment leader, and use balanced scorecard. So one of the things that this system does, and again, you need to start with where you are. So I'm going to paint a larger picture here. We talk about the innovation pipeline, and the first part of the innovation pipeline is this portfolio management area. It may be a portfolio within an IT organization, it may be a portfolio within a business unit, it may be a portfolio from a corporate standpoint. But there's this bigger concept of not just the innovation pipeline, which largely people kind of associate with like R&D, that somehow they're developing these neat new things, and that's the innovation we're talking about. And to a large degree, we are. But in a larger scope, there's this concept of value creation. You've probably heard of the value chain, which is typically used, that terminology, within supply chains. But there's also this concept of value creation, which every part of the organization should contribute value. So there's been work done by Robert Kaplan from Harvard University, where he built this concept of a strategy map. But also one of the things he realized after he completed this strategy map was it was really a map that showed the entire holistic pieces of an entity, whether it's nonprofit or for-profit, which really represented the value creation map. And so we refer to it as a value creation map rather than a strategy map. The normal strategy map would be purely black and white, wouldn't have these color elements. These color elements, again, we talked about the traffic lighting techniques, which is green, yellow, and red. So in this case, this green area down here means that everything's fine with retention. We're not losing a whole lot of people. Essentially, losing people faster than we can bring them on would be a bad problem. In acquisitioning new customers, for example, some challenges in there, and that's why it's yellow. For innovation of new products and services, we have some questions about what our portfolio should be and what's selling, what's not selling. That's the reason why things are yellow. Innovation opportunities out there, but we don't quite have enough funding to go out and get those opportunities right now. These are reasons why something would be yellow. But one of the things that you'll see that we're doing here is what we call these things management at a glance view. From a single web page, you can see where the issues are that you need to deal with, rather than having to click and then click again and click it in just to drill down to these levels in order to find things that are red someplace in this massive set of stuff. This allows all that information to percolate up to the top so you can see that something's in trouble, and then you can do the drill down. In these particular areas, each of these is a button, so you can drill down to see specifically, what's going on at that level. If I drill down into, let's say, this increased asset utilization, it brings us down to everything having to do with asset utilization. In this case, we're clarifying the implementation of the balanced scorecard, and there's some cost reductions that can be done in that. So the system is capable of looking at revenue, product and service revenue, but it's also capable of looking at internal improvements from the standpoint of cost reductions or increased productivity. Those can be modeled within the system. So within each area, we can see that within the increased asset utilization that we have this red item here where we're trying to clarify the implementation, the holistic view of the company through the use of what's called the balanced scorecard. And that has to do with cost reduction, which will help the company to grow and maintain itself. If it's not using cash for other purposes, then it can invest those in other areas. So within the charter, we have objectives, strategy for each of the charters. When we click on charter, once you have put in this information, if this information exists within your company, allows you to see kind of a hierarchical view of the information. So in this case, these little blue things here represent the charters, and the little gold cups here represent the objectives, and the little stars here represent the strategies. So we have a number of objectives that we talked about, and then we have various strategies for getting those. So for example, grow 200% year over year. Well, that's a nice objective. It says a time frame, which is a year. It tells us how much we want to grow by 200%. But that's a big goal. It needs to be broken down into how we're going to do it. The objectives tell us what we're going to do and when we're going to do it, where the strategies tell us how we're going to do it. So we essentially developed a business on top of Force.com, and we can also sell that independently of the CRM. There's selling to existing Salesforce customer users, and part of that is selling templates through the App Exchange, or cross-selling additional templates and services to prior clients with Salesforce. So these are all different strategies as to how we might be able to come up and grow the business at 200% year over year. So it's great to brainstorm stuff and put it all in here, but the reality is that you never have enough resources to do everything that you would come up with. So you have to make some choices about what you're going to do and what you're not going to do. And so this gets back to when we talked about the ranking. We have to have a way to rank the information. So if we go into one of these strategies here, you will see that it has a number of sections to it. It has a number of attributes to it that we can use to help with ranking. So again, there's usually a status that tells you what stage of information based on it started, investigating, identifying the targets, creating a plan. Those sort of things are part of the status. Again, everything basically has a color associated with it. So once we start it, we can put green, for example, that's going well. In the balanced scorecard, you have the perspective. So selling to PMOs and to other organizations, what perspective? Where are we adding value into this thing? So if we choose a perspective, say financials here, so what are we doing here? We're adding additional market, another mix into the market, adding mix into the product structure. So we can add various characteristics as to how this benefits the company and in which perspective. In the balanced scorecard, they have perspective of financial, from an investor's viewpoint, from a customer's viewpoint, from an internal process viewpoint. This last one is really has to do with from an employee perspective. It allows you to look things at a different perspective and figure out why you're doing something. When I go around and talk to executives about how are things going with their company, and I ask them, well, how are your strategies doing? They usually come back with, well, we had great strategies. And I say, well, how's that going? And they say, well, we're not quite sure. And I ask them, well, why are you not sure? It says, well, we don't have good feedback from the people who are executing, so we assume the strategies are going well, but we don't know for sure. And if I ask people on the bottom, how things going, how does this, what you're working on, relate to your company strategies, they typically say, what strategy? For a long time, it seemed like people that only top management could understand the strategy of the company. It was this ivory white tower on the top, and the executives would go into a room and figure this out, and then they'd come out and tell everyone, oh, this is what we're going to do. That probably works fine in places where people with limited freedom of will in other countries. It doesn't work so well in the United States, where people have a choice as to where they're employed. And so they want to understand how their contribution in the company, how does it make that company successful? And whether this company will be successful relative to its competitors, relative to what's going on in this country versus another country. We are truly now in a global marketplace. Every country is capable of competing with us. If you've read about what Brazil has done and gotten themselves organized, so it isn't like every little company has to figure out how to do it. Brazil as a country has organized their industries to understand how to go after markets in other countries. So we truly need to think of ourselves now as in a global environment. And so our strategies have to go to that level. So bringing this back down to the more product level things, we need to consider those in our aspects. When we talk about the product management module, we'll talk about segmentation of markets. But for right now, we're going to talk strictly about what strategies we're going to do. And we'll talk more about the next level of due diligence in the next module. You would normally set the perspective here if you're trying to look at what the balance is across the company. Again, if you talk about a particular perspective, it comes down to kind of what's the effect on the company and what's the categorization for it. So this is the effect that it has.